Morning, good afternoon, good evening. I find it really heartbreaking the way some people have often blamed the rural people for having voted for Zanu PF. Only somebody who doesn't understand the politics of Zimbabwe would say that. A picture of somebody like him wearing the Zanu PF T-shirt with Mnangagwa's face on it has often invited unfriendly comments where people like him are blamed for keeping Zanu PF in office. The truth of the matter is, these rural people are the real victims of this Zanu PF corrupt, incompetent, and tyrannical regime. I grew up in the rural areas, and I know the level of intimidation and influence that Zanu PF leaders in the rural areas exercise over the rural people. Here is a short video clip of the Army General Sanyatwe talking to rural people a few months ago.
Zanu PF itatonga kusika matonge ameranya. Muchida musingadi. Ameni. Apa ndakutaura sakomanda army. Shashandisa inonzi command 40. Yes. Yaya yemasapuku waridzi wemusanga chazvigadzira. Amen. Zanu PF. Pamberi na igi Mnangagwa. Pasi nemandu. Kuma security forces saka PC mkuru wemaudondini.
That is Zanu PF. If you live in the rural area, you know you have to listen to Zanu PF. Who would want to stay in a mud hovel like that one if they can help it? No one. But when you live in the rural area, you own nothing. That is precisely the point. The headman, the village head, can tell you to move. And many have been moved because they belong to the opposition. That is the biggest serious crime you can commit in Zimbabwe if you live in the rural areas. The village head will tell you to move. And many have had their properties destroyed. Zanu PF has been frog marching rural voters to attend the party's rallies and then frog marching them to vote. Your refusing to attend Zanu PF rallies could mean you being punished. This is another rule of order. The cap is wearing, it's got the Zanu PF name on it. And the unkind remark at the corner, at the bottom corner there, is reading, asking the reader to write an essay of what he can see in the picture. And he should not forget about the chicken inn. This is reference to the chicken inn and drinks that Zanu PF leaders gave to their buzzed-in supporters, particularly in the rural areas, who attended the party's rallies. Even attending those party rallies, you could easily be victimized, particularly if the party was to lose in that particular area. Many have been victimized. So it's not as if these people have a choice. They do not have a choice. And that I can never overemphasize. Here is Margaret Dongo saying exactly what I've been saying there. The Zanu PF stranglehold on the people.
They have wrong priorities, especially the current government. How can you go and build an airport which services a few people, and the majority are the elite and the so-called investors? Look at the rural. I made you come to interview me because I wanted you to have the experience of the roads that we are using. If we go today to our hospital there, you feel pity with that's a hospital in a rural area. If we go to our clinic, you feel pity. We have no piped water here. Do you know the reason why the rural people vote for Zanu PF? One, they're intimidated. Two, the policy is that the rural people should remain poor and subservient to the government. They should remain poor, because if they remain poor, they continue singing the song for their master. This is why these people have been impoverished. It's for a reason. Because at the moment, if you economic empower these people, they'll go out of hand. Zanu PF will never have control over them.
This is an economic reality that some people have failed to appreciate. I've got there a picture of the late John Robertson. He was an economist and a banker. A Zimbabwean economist and a banker. In the 1970s, John Robertson gave a proposal to Ian Douglas Smith and his government, explaining the vast economic benefits of giving the rural Zimbabwean blacks title deeds to the land on which they do a living. He explained how that would open up a completely new economic dynamic. You will economically empower them. Ian Douglas Smith rejected the proposal. for no other reason other than that he did not want the blacks economically empowered, because he feared that an economically empowered black would demand political power next. That was it. Interestingly enough, after independence, John Robertson gave the same proposal to Robert Gabriel Mugabe and his administration, and explained the economic benefits of giving the rural people title deeds. Guess what? Mugabe and company rejected the proposal for the same reason. Zanu PF has often boasted that their rural areas are their strongholds. And it is precisely that. Because the rural people are being deliberately kept poor, with no economic power at all, and therefore they're no more than medieval serfs, forever beholden to the Zanu PF ruling elite and their proxies. That is it. The image we are seeing of the rural poverty in Zimbabwe is not of the rural people choosing. If they were given title deeds to the piece of land, even 1 acre, they will build a better homestead on that piece of land. They will be able to invest in improving it, building proper toilets, making sure that there's clean water. If you have to dig a well, dig a well. Plant fruit trees. Because they will know whatever they're putting, effort they're putting in that piece of land, improving it, they can recover it, even if they should want to move away from it. Or they can pass it on to their children and grandchildren. But when you do not hold title deeds, when you can be moved for whatever reason, you can be told to move, you have no appeal, you have no title deeds, you don't own the piece of land. Some of the times you'll be allowed to sell the house. But whoever buys it may find themselves in a situation where the yard on which that house stands is given to somebody else. That is how insecure that whole arrangement is. The irony of it is Zimbabwe will never really be truly free until we free the medieval serfs in the rural area. Because Zanu PF claims that it has got the rural areas as its political stronghold. The population in the rural areas is 60% plus. In other words, Zanu PF has got an inbuilt 60% of the vote straight away. Inbuilt. During campaigning period, it is very common to hear that rural areas are no-go areas for the opposition. The opposition candidates, all of them, they fight over seats in the urban centers where they've got a chance of winning. Rural areas, you only go there because you have failed to secure a seat in the urban centers. Even the blacks who have grown up in the rural areas, you'll find that if you're in the opposition, you would want to secure a seat in the urban centers. But even there, Zanu PF has had ways of extending its reach. So you find the boundaries for constituencies have been drawn in such a way that an otherwise urban constituents will have a part that's rural. How that is possible is, of course, part of the gerrymandering. Zanu PF controls the rural voters and has diluted some of the urban centers, particularly those adjoining rural areas, by making sure that a chunk of those constituencies have got a rural vote where they've got control over the voters. I repeat, as long as Zanu PF retains its stranglehold on the rural voters, Zimbabwe will never be free. Because Zanu PF will always coerce the rural voters to vote for the regime. We need a better thinking. Indeed, there's been often talk of we want free, fair, and credible election. This may be a top priority in the urban centers, but not so in the rural areas. To fight for free, fair, and credible elections in the rural areas is a waste of time as long as those rural voters are not given title deeds to the land. Because you give them the title deeds to the land, you have given them the confidence to know that they can now exercise their political right without fear that there will be repercussions. And the worst repercussions for a rural voter would be to find themselves being told by the village head that they've got to move. They must move. It is quite common. Zanu PF has been bribing village heads, chiefs, making them no more than Zanu PF political commissars. And to end their keep, those village heads have openly been campaigning for Zanu PF. And each village head does not want Zanu PF to be able to say, in your village, why is it that so many people voted for the opposition? Because they will know that is a sure ticket for them losing their position as village head. So I repeat, Zimbabwe will never be truly independent and enjoy freedom until we secure the freedom of the rural voters. Right now, they are in the clutches of Zanu PF. It is tragic, very tragic indeed, that in this day and age, somebody should live in a mud hovel and be forced to live in abject poverty for selfish political gain. And I think what makes it even more tragic is that the whites oppress the rural people. And in 1980, people thought they were finally going to enjoy freedom, only to find themselves being equally oppressed and exploited by the incoming black regime. There is absolutely no excuse why Zanu PF is denying the rural people title deeds to the land on which their houses are built. Ironically, Zanu PF has made a big song and dance about its land redistribution, how it has seized land from the white farmers to give back to the blacks. The truth of the matter is, the majority of those white farms, former white owned farms, have been given to Zanu PF loyalists. A few blacks from the rural areas have been settled in so-called small-scale farms. But invariably, most of those people you'll find, they'll get that small farm allocation using something they call an offer letter from the government. And it is not surprising that that offer letter can easily be withdrawn. It's not the same thing as a title deed. Banks have refused to accept them because they know, and they know from experience, that those offer letters, you may find it being withdrawn at the drop of a hat. So those people have never been able to use those farms they were allocated as collateral because they don't own them. The offer letter can be withdrawn. It's only the few ruling elite who have got title deeds to some of these farms. Last year, a few months ago at least, a story broke out of how the late dictator Mugabe's daughter was going through the divorce with her husband. And between them, they owned 12 farms, which, if they were joined together, would be bigger than the country of Lesotho. They had the title deeds. And here we are. The regime is refusing to give title deeds to the rural povo, who's in comparison to the land size that Bona holds, is no more than the size of a postage stamp. Yet the regime is adamant is refusing to give them the title deeds. This is an outrage. It is really tragic that 44 years after independence, the rural people are still being treated, or rather ill-treated, by the very regime that claims to have liberated the people of Zimbabwe. I don't think anyone should, in this day and age, find themselves calling a place like that hut their home. In this day and age, I think if they was given the land, the title deeds, and they still lived in the hut like that, yes, one would say, why are you doing that? But at the present moment, I believe this is a deliberate, calculated thing by Zanu PF to keep the rural people poor, ignorant, and totally helpless. That cannot be right. This is the one social injustice that we should not allow to continue. This must be ended ASAP. It's absolutely inexcusable. No one deserves to be held a modern slave. Thank you and good night.